A commemorative book that traces the history and contributions of Singapore's cooperatives has been launched recently. Titled Singapore Cooperatives, Singapore Stories, the book was created to mark the country's bicentennial this year.
That's right, and we have the book with us right here, and also we have the Singapore National Cooperative Federation's CEO, Dolly joining us for more on this. Dolly, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing us the copies of the book as well.
Thank you.
Now, give us a sense of how cooperatives then have sort of changed and evolved, and how they're different, in fact, from normal businesses.
Well, normal businesses are owned by people who don't have to come together, but co-ops are members coming together to own these businesses, and they don't just put profit as the most important, but they put values and social needs and economic needs more important than profitability.
Okay.
It's at its core, it's about people, isn't it?
Yes.
So we've had a long history of cooperatives in Singapore. I understand it goes all the way back to the early 1920s.
Yes.
Tell us something about what the earliest cooperatives were like.
Well, in the 1920s, people had difficulty in getting hold of money when they needed it, and it was not easy access to the banks for loans. So they got together, and the first co-op, which is a credit cooperative, was formed in 1925. There were 3 co-ops that were formed in 1925, and they provided loans, but they also encourage thrift, and that's very important.
Yes, thrift and loans.
Exactly. They encourage people to save for rainy days, and they continue. These 3 cooperatives are still operating very successfully today.
It must have been a huge sort of barrier or a guard against people getting sucked in by loan sharks, for example,
yes,
right? Yeah.
Yes. So at that time, loans interest rates was about 24%, and even today, credit cooperatives offer loans at about only 6%. So it really helped them in when they needed the money.
Yes.
And cooperative is really coming together so that they can help one another, and that's very important.
Yeah.
Now, given how co-ops have sort of been around in Singapore for so long, and how Singapore has transformed so much since the early 1900s, how have they sort of played a part then in nation building?
So you find that in 1920s, when there is always the social needs, new cooperatives are being formed. So those were the days when they needed credit, and we still need credit today, so the credit co-ops are still around today. But if you look at after World War II, inflation was very high, and they needed supplies. So the grocery shops was formed. They were the cooperatives. And today, if you go along Paya Lebar Road, you'll see 2 roads that is named, one called Thrift Avenue and another Rochdale. And Rochdale is the place where the cooperative was started in England. So people came together and they formed that. In 1970s, after the modernization seminar by the NTUCs, the NTUC cooperative were being formed. The first being Income, which is offering insurance for really the workers, especially the low-income workers that was not covered by very commercial insurance companies. And today, if you look at it, the kind of co-ops that are being formed are the co-ops for freelancers.
Yes, for the gig economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you have the GPs. We have the most recent one. The GPs got together to form a co-op so that together they have a volume of drugs, and they could get a better price, and that will be passed on to the consumers.
Well, there's strength in numbers, isn't there?
Yes.
So with the history of cooperatives in Singapore so enduring, it seems like, there wouldn't be very much to challenge it, but are there any challenges that face cooperatives going forward, do you think, for the future, especially as we become more, sort of digitally transformed? Does it make a difference?
Well, I think cooperatives exist because there are social needs. And as long as we have social needs, there will be cooperatives. And I think that's very important. So in Singapore, if you look, although we are in the digital economy, you will find that in 2030, 1 in 4 Singaporeans are going to be over the age of 65. So
Yes.
as we progress, cooperatives do not forget their pioneers, their elderlies. And we go to the schools and we spread the message of cooperatives. We encourage young people to form cooperatives because they know best what is the social needs in their age group. And at the same time, we do internship with our cooperatives that have old people and seniors, and they can learn from these seniors who have lots of experience.
Yeah. Dolly, thank you very much for coming into the studios and sharing with us more about this wonderful book, Singapore Cooperatives, Singapore Stories. They truly are Singapore stories about all of us and about problems and issues and challenges that we all face at one point or another. Thank you very much for that. That was Ms. Dolly Goh. She's CEO of the Singapore National Cooperative Federation.